Welcome to Books in Hindsight. I am your host, Matthew Hines. Today we have the lovely Amy Collins from New Shelves Books. She's here to talk to us about changes in the publishing industry, as well as her books, The Right Way and Write and Grow Rich, a collaboration she did with a number of authors and publishers. Before we start, I want to send a shout out to one of my new sponsors on Patreon. His name is Captain Seabear Caligaro. He was a lieutenant when he started, but he upped his subscription or his sponsorship, and now he is a full-fledged captain in the Hero Heinessight Elite Reconnaissance Outfit Brigade. And we look forward by looking back. So thank you for your sponsorship. And if you want to sponsor us, go ahead and do so at patreon.com/hindsight. Now, if you want to catch this podcast on YouTube, you may do so at Books in Hindsight, or just go to booksinhindsight.com and check out this podcast and any other. And this podcast is available on YouTube in video form, as well as Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, and Google Play. So with that, let's bring Amy Collins out. Let's go to the phones.
Welcome to Books in Hindsight, the only podcast where hindsight is always 2020. And we explore the great books, works, and ideas of the century. Now, here's your host, teacher, and author, Matthew Hines.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Books in Hindsight. As I promised, I have the lovely, the beautiful, I have Amy Collins from New Shelves Books. She's standing by, and she's going to talk to us today not only about the services that New Shelves offers, she's also going to talk to us about two of the books that she has authored. One she co-authored, and the other one she has released. And that one is called The Right Way, and the other one is called Write and Grow Rich. Those are available on the links in the description through Amazon and wherever else they're available. And they will also be available at hindsight.com and booksinhindsight.com, as well as somewhere around New Shelves Books, I am sure. So Amy Collins, you are a legend. Thank you for being on my podcast. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I am hardly a legend. I simply take the same advice that I give my authors. If you tell enough people that you're an expert at something, eventually people start to believe you.
Well, that is not what I've heard, Amy, so I appreciate your modesty. I seem to get all these modest people on my show, but you are a legend, and I just want to reaffirm that. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, and remember that for people who might be new to this podcast, this is a podcast for authors and readers. This is so you understand what's going on in the publishing world. And I had the pleasure a few weeks ago to talk to Carrie Barnum, who is Amy's, she works with Amy. She is, I guess she's technically your employee.
Well, yes, she's the director of marketing at New Shelves.
And she is so full of information.
I know.
I didn't
quickly making me obsolete. It's scary how cutting edge she is.
Well, there's that modesty again. I'm sure you're going to have a few secrets you haven't made Carrie privy to, but yeah, it was a real pleasure talking to Carrie, and so I couldn't wait after hearing about what you guys are doing. I couldn't wait to get you on the podcast. So the first thing we want to do, Amy, is we want to find out about Amy Collins. Where did you grow up? What got you into publishing and authoring?
All right. Well, I've been in the book world for almost 30 years. I was a professional musician when I was young. I studied to be an opera singer. I actually made a living for a short period of time as a touring musician. But making a living as a musician is really hard, and living is kind of a misnomer. You can eat, you can keep, body and soul together, but it doesn't pay very well for the most part. So I got a part-time job one Christmas at a bookstore so that I could make enough money to buy Christmas presents for my family and my friends at the end of, this was in 1992. And when the Christmas season was over, it was a small chain of bookstores in upstate New York that was growing fast. And they asked if I would stay on and work as an assistant book buyer. And I said I would. And within a few years, I was the head book buyer, and I was also the music buyer. And it became a 16-store chain in upstate New York, and I did all the buying. And so I started my career in publishing knowing exactly what book buyers were looking for. I was one. Borders wasn't even around at this point. I mean, they had just gotten started. I was there as a book buyer and as a bookseller when Amazon got launched, when Borders got launched. And I've seen a lot over the years, but I eventually did hop the desk, and I got a job as a sales rep for a large publishing house, and moved on to become a sales director for Adams Media, which was bought by F&W. You guys may know the Writer's Digest and Writer's Market line. And I was their sales director for a number of years. And then I started my own distribution company in 2006, and I haven't looked back.
Wow. Okay. So do you still do the distribution?
I don't, not because I didn't love it and the authors I worked with. I had hundreds of authors at one point. But with print on demand, in the last few years, print on demand has become such a viable and truthfully, it is the right decision for most authors, not all. If you're a cookbook author, a children's book author, there's still a good reason to do offset printing, overseas printing. You may need still a fulfillment house or a wholesaler. But for the most part, print on demand through Ingram Spark as well as KDP will get you 99% of the way. And truthfully, I couldn't look myself in the eye much after 2014 and take people's money. Things have changed. It made a lot of sense in 2008 for me to have a warehouse out in New Hampshire, which I did. And I had lots of employees and lots of authors and publishers, and I was distributing their books. But by 2014, print on demand, it took over for a good reason. It's a great model.
Right. And so I just have a quick question. Because I've dealt with these outlets, I guess you call them, these book distributors, and they don't really like the self-published books so much. What do you agree with that or not?
Now, when you say distributor, do you mean the wholesalers like Baker and Taylor?
We have basically one company up here in Seattle that controls, it's like the mafia, and they distribute or don't distribute your book. And they just say, well, we don't really like self-published books up here. So a lot of people can't get into the normal distribution route into the libraries because these one people have such a hold over the Seattle market. So that's kind of an off-the-cuff question, but let's go back into your...
Well, I would like to comment on that because I don't know which books you're talking about in specific, but my experience is a distributor or a jobber that says we don't take self-published books, that's a really easy way to say no to somebody you can't argue with that. I have sat in the middle of a bookstore and I have watched people with their self-published book. I've watched them hand the book over to the buyer, and the buyer takes one look and says, we don't take self-published books. But what the person is saying is, I don't want this book. Tons of distributors, including distributors to Walmart, take self-published books all the time. What they don't want is a book that looks self-published. They don't want a book. And people who say we don't take print on demand, that's just not true. There is not a library, a bookstore, or a chain anywhere that you can think of that doesn't have print-on-demand books, because tons of books, including books by Random House, so many of them are print-on-demand. So when you hear we don't take self-published books, what they're saying is, I don't want to take this book, but I don't want to argue with you about it. So if I just tell you we have a policy, you can't come back at me with anything I need to deal with, and I'm done with you. So I would argue, go back to them with a better book or with a better marketing plan or more convincing reasons to work with you. No, it's just the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is, and it's just different up here, and like the books that I'm talking about are about the Middle East, and they give more of a like factual, because I lived there, more of a realistic view of people and how nice it is to live there, which I think just is so against what people want to believe about the Middle East. I don't know. But,
well, that's true. But even if Random House had published that book, most jobbers or wholesalers wouldn't carry it because that's not a book that the bookstores are particularly interested in. So, I mean, it's a new world where you can get your book out in audio, you can get your book out in ebook, and you can get your book out online. And bookstores really no longer are the bastions of giving a book a try. They're not really in the business of developing authors the way they used to be. Right. They're in the business to stay open.
Right. So then we're talking about kind of a parallel world, because by 2014, I published my first book in 2005, and I'd gone through like these people that help you publish, and I did a couple of books like that. But by 2014, I said, man, there must be something different, because I was publishing my last book about Saudi Arabia, and people said, you got to go to CreateSpace. You can do it for free there. So after all these really bad experiences I had with these different people that help you publish, I did go the self-publishing route, and then I started to see some success. Mm-hmm. But from between the time that I started out, and this is why talking to Carrie was so enlightening, between the time I started in 2005 and now, there have been so many changes. And now you had you had a post on Twitter the other day, and it just seems like things are going so quickly with publishing and everything that you basically have to use somebody like you guys just to stay up with what's happening with your books.
If you want to stay on top of what's happening in the publishing industry and stay on top of the tools that the best and most successful publishers are using, I love Joanna Penn. I follow her. I follow Joel Friedlander and thebookdesigner.com. Jane Friedman, can't go wrong. Her hot sheet is worth it all day long. Those are three. Then there's also Ally, ALLI, the Association of Independent Authors. You should check out Orna Ross and her group. But there's a few places where you can go. But if you decide to start, like you did, Matthew, to start your own publishing company, I have to tell you, it's a little different than starting a Chinese restaurant, because, I mean, you can start a Chinese restaurant and it'll either succeed or it won't. But there aren't a whole lot of changes going on to Mushu Pork over the years. But in publishing, I spend a minimum of 4 or 5 hours a week reading articles, following blogs, reading magazine articles. I have to. There's so much going on right now with Wattpad. Wattpad, which I thought was dead, is completely reinventing itself. If you'd asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you that libraries they were absolutely dead. They're not. Everything changes. Things that I thought were over. I did an interview with David Chilton yesterday, or day before yesterday, where he explained to me, and he had proof, actual solid proof, that radio interviews were turning around and that they were starting to sell books. That was not true for the last decade. Everything changes. And so what I know to be true, what I know for a fact, that always makes me a little suspicious. So I spend a lot of time educating myself. And I would recommend that anyone who wants to be successful in this business do the same thing. And that's why I put out my newsletter. That's why I'm constantly writing blogs for other people.
Okay, so we're going to talk, because we're starting to get into the area of new shelves and what you guys do, but I want to talk a little bit about the right way. And my thing is that authors sometimes find that by when they put a book out and then they say, well, that didn't really sell the way I wanted it to, so I'm gonna do something else. And another thing that something else to kind of promote it, whether it's making YouTube videos, doing a podcast, and I've done them all. So I'm no stranger to multimedia, but What was your inspiration for which came first, The Right Way or Write and Grow Rich?
Well, The Right Way came first. I wanted an overview book. I was tired of explaining to people that they needed to buy their own ISBNs, that they shouldn't take the free one from CreateSpace. I was tired of explaining to people what the difference was between a wholesaler and a distributor. There was just so much that I was, people were putting their books out and then they were thinking about how to promote or sell. And so The Right Way is a very slim, it's only about 180 pages, but it's an overview book that says if you're going to self-publish, you need to know these terms. You need to know what a distributor is. You need to understand if you use somebody else's ISBN, what you're giving up. And it's an overview of the entire process. It's by no means meant to be exhaustive, but that was the point. The point was that if you read my book, you wouldn't be asking me some of the simple questions I was having to answer 5 times a day. Right.
Yeah, but now, okay, so you released that book in 2015?
Yes, I did. And a lot has changed since then. So I'm updating.
I know it. So
there's a new edition coming out this month.
Ah, great. Okay, so that will come out this month. And is it going to be the same title?
Yes, it's just The Right Way here. I've got it. Hold on one second. I've got a copy here.
I'm glad.
And for those of you authors who are watching this podcast, always have a copy of your book ready to show. There you go. Yeah, you'll notice that I've got mine right behind me. But the book will look very similar to this. It's just going to be a second edition. But one of the things that you'll find in this book that I talk about is I discuss setting up with wholesalers and how important that is. Well, at least 3 of the wholesalers that I mentioned in this book have gone out of business in the last couple of years. So some things have been updated. Other things weren't even mentioned. There were some things that weren't even around. Shopify wasn't even on my radar when I wrote this book, but now it's important. So I'm updating it as fast as I can.
Yeah, wow. It just almost seems like something you'd have to keep on an iPad or something so it could constantly be re-updated. And since you brought this up, you're somebody that, because you're so quick with your wit, you notice that my books are where?
Right behind you.
And so they are books in Heinessight?
Heinessight.
There it is.
I
was thinking, well, someday somebody's going to come out, but I couldn't wait for that. So
now, see, and I don't know how family friendly this show is, but if you took those books and you moved them over there, would that make them ass backwards?
Yeah.
You can edit that out.
Well, no, that's fine. I'm sure that's okay, even for family viewing these days. All right, Amy, so we're talking about The Right Way, and you are going to put out a new book, and you're going to update people on things that they do to, and I assume this is after the book is written. Is that correct?
Yes. Although I do include not only in this book, but on my website, and I offer this for free. Anyone can go to newshelves.com/store, newshelves.com/store, and you can download for free. I've got a checklist. What it is a, stage 10, stage 9. Some people say, well, month 10, month 9. Some people move faster than others. But, while you're writing the book, you need to find a copy editor, and you need to do this, and you need to do that. And I've got a whole list of things to keep in mind so that, when your book is being laid out and designed, are you setting up your ISBNs at Books in Print? When you are setting up your books in ISBN and Books in Print, are you also creating advanced reader copies that you can send out for endorsements? And so it's just a list of all the things to keep in mind as you move forward to publish your book. And if your book's already out, you can go back and still do a lot of those things just because you're a little further along the process. But yeah, and I offer that both on my site and in the book.
Okay. So which came first, New Shelves or The Right Way?
Oh, New Shelves. New Shelves came years ago. 2006, I started a business called the Cadence Group. Mm-hmm. And that was a marketing and sales. I mean, I literally sold books to Michaels and Barnes and Noble and Borders at the time. And we were heavily into sales and distribution. But I started New Shelves as a distribution and education platform back in 2000, and I believe it was 2012. And I've been doing that ever since. And so the Cadence Group, which is still in business and does great, it's under the leadership of a woman named Bethany Brown, and you should totally check her out. She does something very different than what I do, but it's a great company. And she knows more about editorial and publishing than I would ever, she's forgotten more than I've ever known. But she's more on the editorial and publishing side, and I know a little bit more about distribution and sales. So that's what New Shelves is all about.
Okay, well, we're going to put New Shelves on the shelf for a few minutes. No pun intended, I guess. So we need to go back to the right way. Now, you, I guess, just decided, I'm sick and tired of answering all of these same questions, and now you can just refer people back to your book. That's why you wrote it, correct?
Yes, and I also have a frequently asked questions page on my website at newshelves.com where I've got little videos that I've shot, but I've also got blogs that I've written that answers things like, what is the Library of Congress catalog and publication block? And what's the difference between that and a PCIP offered by the Donahue Group? And why do, what is the right trim size for your book? What I do is, when too many people ask me over and over again, why do I need my own publishing imprint, or why do I need my own ISBN? I put it up on my website as well.
Well, great. So yeah, if you are publishing or getting ready to publish a book, you really, you have to have at least Amy's expertise through her book, because otherwise you're going to spend so much time just trying to figure out what it is that you're supposed to be doing. So Amy, I imagine since you started, and you started at the same time, I believe I published in 2005, and I think that was the beginning of like the self-publishing industry, right?
Well, you were right at the early stages, yes.
At the cusp, I was a pioneer.
Although I do want to mention that Samuel Clemens self-published his first few books. Yeah. So if you think of it that way, we're all just newcomers. But self-publishing's been around for a long time. Louisa May Alcott, Mark Twain, we're in good company.
Yeah, I know that, and that is nice to know. And back in those days, it was, you had to have like a guaranteed revenue source of people who were going to buy that book, or they wouldn't even bother with it. So anyway, that is interesting that we kind of have this parallel world, and I have done probably everything, and Carrie and I were laughing about it, but I've probably done everything the wrong way, and I should have consulted you guys. Of course, I didn't know about you. I was in the Middle East at the time, but if I had known about you guys, I definitely would have gone through you. So we are talking about, if you're just joining the podcast or just not sure what we're doing here, we're talking to Amy Collins, and she is the CEO of New Shelves Books. So we're talking about her two books. One is The Right Way, and the other one is Write and Grow Rich. And we've decided that, and we've learned from Amy, that The Right Way came about because she just got basically the same questions again and again, and thought that she could help people to better have a better experience publishing. So, and I imagine it's very frustrating to have people that will come to you and say, "Oh, my book isn't selling, so what should I do?" And then you kind of have to think for them. Is that is that where you find yourself sometimes?
Well, yes, and unfortunately, I wish I was a nicer person, because this is where my desire to be liked completely conflicts with what I know about the industry. If someone comes to me and says, "I've only sold 13 copies of my book," and I look at their book on Amazon, this is usually what I find. They have almost no reviews on Amazon or anywhere else. And when I asked them about it, they said, "Well, I asked my friends to post reviews and nobody did." Okay, well, so that's always one of the first things that I see. And I explain to them that that's not how that works. Their cover is very rarely acceptable. Usually when a book is not selling very well, one of the big problems is that they did not spend the time and trouble to have their book properly designed by a traditionally trained and highly vetted cover designer. Number 3, they're not actually promoting it in any way. They're hoping that it's going to be discovered on its own. And that's not how things work, I'm afraid. It was never how they worked. But even more so now. you need to advertise and push your keywords using Amazon. You have to invest in promoting your book. And I don't mean get in the car and do an author signing tour. I mean active promotion, where you are asking a couple of bloggers and a couple of newspapers every day to consider interviewing you. Reach out every day to podcasters, to radio stations, and ask if they'd like to do a giveaway of your book. Would they like you? Perhaps you can write for the blog the 5 things that you need to know about, I don't know, emus. And if it's an emu blog site and it's a big fan site for emus, then they're going to be desperate for content, and they'd love to see your 5 reasons why you need to, have an emu. So this needs to happen every day that you want to promote your book. I mentioned before the joke about starting a Chinese restaurant. I don't know many people who start a new business and then just expect the business to take care of itself. Yet authors quite often will launch a book, they'll publish a book, put it out there, and they expect it to take care of itself. And so that usually is where I get in a lot of trouble, and most people at that point hang up on me.
All right. Well, Amy, I'm just going to have to jump in here. Carrie and I discussed this when we talked. I'm guilty as charged on all counts. I am that guy who says I am such a great writer that I don't need to have a good cover. I can just design my own because it's my writing that sells. And I've had the kind of results that you would expect, I guess. So that was kind of the big eye opener to me. Was I thought, because I was very popular in high school because everybody thought I'd be the big writer, and I had to go off into teaching, and I finally came back to writing. I thought, well, this is my time, and this is my destiny, and I'm going to be a world famous writer, no problem. But that really didn't happen yet. So I did what a lot of writers probably are at the point. They come to you and they say, well, what should I do? Of course, I didn't come to you or anybody. I came up with my own crazy ideas. But when they stop to sell their books, they come to you and they start to tell you, what should I do? And so I'm not going to have you regurgitate all of these things that you can just say in your book. But I just want to know, does this happen on a daily basis?
It happens on a minutely basis. I receive over 400 emails a day. And that's just me. I can't even imagine what Joel Friedlander and Jane Friedman and Joanna Penn and what's with all the J's now that I'm thinking about it. But I can't imagine the emails they get. Thousands upon thousands of books are published every day now. Thousands of books are published every day, and most of them don't deserve to be published. But because of the technology, actually, they're not actually published, they're printed. They're released. Truly to be published, there needs to be an editorial process, a heavy-handed editorial process, and a wonderful design and vetting process. Yeah. So, yes, it's a very common occurrence, but that's okay. You know what else is common? Really, really talented singers who get a gig at the local bar, at the local Holiday Inn, singing Mustang Sally. And people love them. They sing, they're there every third Friday night, and they've got fans, and people adore them, and that's their life. They're never going to open for the Rolling Stones. They're not going to go to Vegas and get their own show. They're going to be stuck at the Holiday Inn in Bath, New York, and that's okay. But if you really want to get to Vegas and get your own show, if you want to be touring with the Rolling Stones, and I realize I'm dating myself by mentioning Bruce Springsteen and the Rolling Stones.
Mustang Sally gave it away for me.
It did, yes. But if you want that, then you have to work for it just as hard as what someone who, if you see people on the radio and country music television and in Nashville, they've worked their heinies off, and they have listened to coaches, and they have changed what they wanted to do, and they have made sacrifices, and they've made compromises. I'm sorry, compromises is not a dirty word when what you're doing is giving the listener, or in the case of an author, the reader, what they want. That's not compromising. That's actually honoring your readers. So I would suggest that if you're not getting the sales that you want, let's get together and figure out what it is your readers are looking for, and let's get it them. Let's change things up so that you can offer your readers what they want.
All right. Well, I want to talk about that, Amy, and also it's very hard to interview you with all of your cultural references, because I'm sitting here laughing, and I just hope people appreciate you, because I certainly do. You have some great jokes.
I'm a big fan of analogies, I'm afraid.
Okay, so let's go. Let's talk about Write and Grow Rich. That is a collaboration. And is it the same motivation? Are we just trying to help people out that are not, I don't want to say bothering you, but that it's the same? No, very different. Alinka, who's a wonderful promoter and marketer, had this idea that we should get a bunch of people, Tom Knowles, and Daniel Hall and Deb Drum, and she asked a bunch of us who all had different points of view on the industry to answer a question about, and it was a specific set of questions about how to be successful at writing. And everyone had their own take on it. And it's a wonderful overview book that has 20 different points of view of what all these people have found to work, that have taken off. And because there's a lot of talented authors out there, what this book does is it talks about successful authors and what their habits are. And it's a really great book. I've learned a lot from it. But I'm only 1/20th of it. I'm just a teeny little percentage. All right, but I apologize for not. So the people that are on this that collaborated with you, they are authors or they are publishers? They're a little of both. Some of them are authors. Some of them own distribution companies. Some of them are experts that have hung a shingle out. People like me who make a living educating people. It's a smattering of everything. Okay, so you have publishers, you have authors, and again, we have to get back into this dating. I mean, the technology has changed. When did this book come out? This book just came out last month. So this book came out, yes. The pub date was October 2018, and 99% of the book is all about mindset. It's not so much, I mean, yes, they might talk about Skype. I doubt it, though. A couple of the people who are authors and who have written chapters of this book, they have sold millions of books on Create Spaces, and now it's called KDP. But for the most part, the book is, other than small changes like that, there's very little in there that isn't very relevant. Okay. Yeah, because I was going to say, we've been talking about this stuff is so, dated and is changing. But yeah, it is up to date. So that is awesome. So again, the books are The Right Way, and Amy published this in 2015. And the other one is Write and Grow Rich, and that is a collaboration with a bunch of authors and publishers. And I'm going to have to take a look at that, I guess, as well as The Right Way. So, Amy, let me ask you, the publishing world is changing, and you talked about there are books that are getting published that shouldn't be published. I just want to hear you, because I'm old school. I think publishing should be for literature and for people who teach things. And what is an example, if you want to say it, of something that you think shouldn't actually be published? Oh, yes, I'm glad you asked that, because I want to be clear. There is not a topic or a genre that I don't think, if it's well done, shouldn't be published. I mean, poetry's on its way back. I mean, poetry is roaring back like a giant right now. I'm not a huge poetry fan, but sure, of course poetry should be published and literature should be published. Cookbooks are the #1 selling category right now in entertainment books. And if you go to your local library, cookbooks and entertainment books, they're at the top of the echelon in terms of books that are being checked out. Cookbooks? Really? Of course they should still be published, but I never would have thought of that for 2 reasons. Most of the recipes that I find online. I don't use cookbooks. And number 2, I hate to cook. So I'm clearly not the market. So I do not get to say what should be published and what shouldn't be published. What I do get a vote on is what is well published and what is poorly published. And if you have written a memoir or a self-help book or a novel, and you have not had it properly edited and vetted by somebody who really knows your genre, someone who knows memoir, someone who has worked for decades, labored in the pits of the fiction world, and you put it out yourself without any editing because you think you know best, I would argue that your book is probably not officially published as much as printed. Because unless your book has been developmentally edited, copy edited,
properly laid out and designed, proofread. It's been ARCed, advanced reader copied. It's been, sent out for vetting. That's not actually publishing. That's more just slapping some covers on some written word, and that's printing a book. And I'm cool with that. But it makes it hard on the reader who expects a certain flow in a genre, who expects if you're going to have a self-help book that there be a certain level of grammatical and language baseline. And I'm guilty, truthfully. I am the worst writer ever. I am such a terrible writer. I'm a good storyteller, and I've got a lot of knowledge to impart. But in terms of actually writing, guys, most of my writing gets torn apart by my editors and gets completely put back together. I don't even recognize it because I'm prone to flights of fancy and overuse of ellipses, and I write in the passive voice. I'm a terrible writer, but I'm a good expert. So I let other writers do the writing for me, and I let my knowledge be shared in book form. But I don't have the ego to think that I'm always the best writer.
Well, all right. Now you've thrown down the gauntlet, Amy, so I've got to read that book of yours. I am sure you are an awesome writer, and I spend a lot of my time in the passive as well. So anyway, that's very interesting.
Well, maybe you're not a good writer either. I'm kidding. That was a joke.
No, that's fine. I know I'm a great writer. So if you want to take a challenge, then I'll be glad to send you a little excerpt, and you can tell me what you think.
I would like more than an excerpt. I'm going to go online and buy one of your books.
Are you? Okay. Well, I want.
Which one should I buy? Here, I'll do it right now.
Okay, buy the Rainier Paradigm. It's my fiction book.
Say it again.
It's called the Rainier Paradigm. And it's kind of along the lines of...
Spell Rainier for me.
Rainier.
Oh, Rainier. Sorry.
Not Rainier.
Yeah.
So that is a book. It's in the vein of Dr. Strangelove. It's a comedy, but it's probably true, unfortunately. Well, anyway, yeah. So you read that, and then you tell me. And okay, so you're here, and I need to talk about your going out and traveling to all these conferences and stuff, which is what you do. So I don't want to forget to come back and ask you about the services of New Shelves Books, but if I do, remind me. So tell me, what do you do? You're on the road constantly. What are you doing out there?
What I'm doing is supporting New Shelves. Yes, I do. I have 2 terrible dogs that I'm avoiding. No, this is what we do here at New Shelves and why I go out and travel so much. My job here in town is to support authors who don't know or who need help getting to the next level, whether it be work with Amazon ads. They don't know how to do keywords or Amazon ads. They don't know how to get reviews. They're one of those people that asked 8 of their friends and 7 of them didn't write reviews and they're frustrated. Putting together sales and marketing plans. This is what we do here. What we do is we try to teach authors to fish, and we're big on teaching people and education. How to get your book into libraries. It is possible if you're self-published to get into bookstores and libraries. It is possible to get your book tested in Costco, but you need to follow certain rules. We teach people how to do that. So I go out to Florida Writers Conference, Dublin's Writers Conference. I'm going to be speaking apparently next March at the Scottish Writers Conference. I'm very excited about that one. I'm going to be in San Diego next month, speaking at a conference there, and with Steve Harrison, whom I adore. And I go out and teach classes on how to get your book up on Amazon so it looks better, how to get more sales on Amazon. And I don't mean tricks. I mean, truthfully, how to get more reviews and what some of the new rules are that are out there, because there are things you can't do on Amazon anymore that you could 6 months ago. I teach classes on bookstores and libraries. I teach a lot of classes on market research, how important it is to treat the other authors in your genre like your community and to join with them and to get to know them. Don't treat them like the enemy. They're not your competition. So I teach classes on how to use a growing base of readership for your Rainier Paradigm, finding out who the people are that your readers are already reading. You know, are they reading the Da Vinci Code? Yes? Well, then let's go find the Da Vinci Code readers and tell them about your book. But you can't do that until you know who the authors are that your readers are already reading. And that's what I do when I'm out on the road. I eat a lot of Applebee's, and I usually, when the classes are over, I rent a motorcycle for a day or two and I ride around, and then I go home, and that's my life.
Well, are you coming to Seattle?
If invited. I've got no plans to at the moment, but if I can find an organization that would like to have me come out, there's no place I won't go.
All right. Well, yeah, we'd love to get you out here. Hopefully you can be on a motorcycle when it's not raining. But yeah, definitely we'd have to get you out here, because this is this used to be they used to say Seattle had the most literate taxi drivers in the world. And I think that's kind of changed a lot, but still we have a very huge, there's a lot of bookstores, a lot of readership. And where I live, there's like 5 bookstores. Within
you live in a golden age there.
Yeah. Well, don't say that. It's not what it used to be. So, all right. So you're out, and when you're going out on the road, you're speaking at conferences then? I'm sorry if I missed that.
Yes. As I said, writers conferences, publisher conferences. I'm going to be one of the keynotes at the Henderson Writers Conference in Las Vegas this year. Wow. I am, a month doesn't go by that I'm not on a plane somewhere, which I love. I teach on cruise ships. There's a line called Publishing at Sea, and I've been doing that for the last 5 years. I'm skipping this year because I'm going to be doing the San Diego thing, but next year I'm back on a cruise ship teaching authors how to publish their book properly.
All right, and with an emphasis on properly, I'm sure. So I have to ask you this, Amy. So New Shelves Books, I take my book to them, and I go to Joel Friedlander, and I don't remember the name of your editors, but I go through the whole process, and then I have what do they call it? I have the stamp of approval, right? I mean, I can go to any publisher, or not publisher, but I can go to any bookstore, distributor, whoever, and say, New Shelves says I'm good, and then I'm in. Right? No, absolutely not. Okay. For this reason, even HarperCollins. You're familiar with HarperCollins? Huge. St. Martin's. Do you think that all of their books get into every bookstore? No. Very few. I used to sell for divisions of some of these big houses, and I'm here to tell you, I worked with HarperCollins, especially up in Canada, and I was a buyer. My Simon & Schuster rep, Simon & Schuster, he would come to me with his catalog, and I would order maybe 20% of the titles. So if Simon & Schuster only gets about 20% of their titles into my stores, guys, I say it again, even no matter how talented you are, there is very little that you can't succeed at in this industry, but you may need to come at it many different ways. You get your book properly published, that's just your ante in. That's just, you're throwing your 50 cents on the table to get into the game. There's so much that has to happen after that. You have to market it. You have to promote it. And then that first book, it's pretty much a given that it's not going to be your most successful book. You have to be writing your second book and your third book and your fourth book. And somewhere around your fifth book, you may start picking up sales. This is not something that's that one book, okay, Harper Lee did it. And Margaret Mitchell. Okay, so in the history of American literature, we have 2 or 3 people who still are mentioned to me, even though both of them are dead and they died of old age. But think about the thousands of books that came out today, and we can only think of 2 or 3 people that survived on one book. That's not how authors make a living. Authors make a living writing for magazines. Writers make a living by writing, and you have to promote your book. And yes, you have to do it properly, but once it's done, you have to promote it, and you have to convince people to read it. And that's where I come in. You don't want me designing your cover, trust me. But if you want me to let 800,000 people know that your book rocks, I can help you with that. Okay, now I've talked to a couple of your authors, and I noticed that the authors that I've talked to that have gone through you guys, they have really nice books, and they're great ideas. So I have to ask you, are there people that you have to just be honest with and say, look, I just don't think just like a literary agency might do, say, it's just not for us. Do you ever have to do that?
I actually have an employee here at New Shelves that easily 20% of his job is sending thank you but no thank you emails for me. I'm sorry. When I talk about getting 400 emails a day, now I'm prone to exaggeration for effect because I'm Irish and that's what we do. But I'm not lying. When I did that 400, that's a minimum. I get more than that some days. And a lot of them are people who would like advice and help. And as much as I'd love to help everyone, I can't. I have to. I mean, there's only one of me. So yes, the truth is I can't really promote a book unless it's got good bones. Have you heard that phrase? Any more than a designer would never take on a house that didn't have good foundation. Same deal. I can fix a cover. I can't fix a bad book.
Do you have what is your judgment? What do you base this on? Is it what you look at, or
7 years as a book buyer and 20 years as a sales director? I go with what I know. I wish there was a 5-point checklist I could give people and say, if you do these 5 things, your book is good enough. But you tell me. You and I were talking about golfing before. Do you golf?
No.
Okay, well then this analogy won't really work for you. But there are people out there who have the exact same golf coach as someone like Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson or any of those guys. What makes Tiger Woods Tiger Woods? There's an intangible. I mean, yes, he worked hard, and yes, he's got the talent, but there were people who worked just as hard as him that didn't make it. And when Tiger Woods hits a good shot, the entire world can see it. But there are hundreds of authors out there that are working just as hard as him, but the coaches can tell whether or not they've got it. And the same thing is true for books. I wish there was a way I could quantify it for people. But the bottom line is a truly great book, just like a truly great work of art, a truly great song, anything that's creative, when you hear it. You may not love Adele, but she's talented. Other people may not be big fans of Van Gogh, but they understand, that he's brilliant. It's the same sort of thing for writing. Okay.
Well, yeah, and you are so eloquent and you make your points so well that is there a book that you just look at and you go, is there a kind of book that you look at? And what I'm thinking of is you have so much today, and remember, I'm old school. I believe in literature and the classics, and
I do too.
But there's the get rich quick kind of books, and it seems like is that, I don't know. I don't want to. I'm sure that is a generalization that you don't want to hear, because there are good books that tell you how to make money. Mm-hmm. But there are so many books. I would say probably a third of the books published today are about something to do with making money. And do you think that is good for the industry?
I don't think it really impacts the industry very much. So many of those books you're aware of, because Matthew, you're delving into this industry very deeply. You have become a true journalist in the sense, I've watched you, I see you on Twitter, I follow you online. You delve in deeply to this industry. You're seeing sides of this industry, and you're going a lot deeper than most people do. 99% of those get rich quick, or how to get cash and get out of debt, or how to land the woman of your dreams. There's tons of books out there that make me cringe, but who am I to say that other people won't find it helpful? And I don't really think it affects the industry any more than Martha May's memoir about going to Oregon in 1904. I don't find that interesting either. I don't want to read about the Great Lakes migration of heron, or there's tons of books I don't find interesting. They don't affect publishing. And a truly great book that is finding its audience is not going to be affected by some of this lower level stuff.
All right. So going back to you're a distributor, right? You had your distribution push. So you're seeing the books come in, and what are some of the things that you do look for and you say that book is going to sell?
The book has to be professionally edited, and I can tell within 3 pages if this person listened to somebody else's advice, or if they thought that they knew better, that they were so enamored with their own writing style that they, I mean, and anyone in our industry can. We can tell when an author thinks that they know best. You can tell within a few pages. So that immediately they go in the no pile. But let's say the writing's good, but the cover art is not good. I will go to them, and if they say yes, I'll hire Mila or Gwen or anyone that, you know, with a good track record. And if you want a good cover, guys, use a cover designer who has already designed a best-selling book. I understand there's a lot of talented cover designers out there, but I only use cover designers who can point to books in their portfolio that sold really well. That's just my rule of thumb. So after I do that, is it priced properly? If a publisher comes to me and wants me to distribute a book, and it's 126 pages, which is a weird page number, by the way, for a book, and it's $18.99 and it's a black and white paperback, that doesn't make any sense. That is not what the marketplace charges for a 123-page book. So there are things that I need to know price, I need to know editorial, I need to know design-wise. Is it properly published? But those are some of the things that I will immediately raise a flag, and I will think, ooh, this publisher isn't ready for prime time yet.
Okay. All right. Well, that's great. Well, I think we are, boy, this time has just gone so fast. So I wanted to ask you, what is you finished Write and Grow Rich, and you've done The Right Way. Is there another, you're going to update The Right Way?
But I have a new book coming out in January.
There we go.
Yeah. It's called Real Fast Platform Building. For authors who are tired of hearing that they need a platform and they don't know how to do it, I have written a book with Daniel Hall. It's just the two of us. It's called Real Fast Platform Building, and it's 21 things that you can do today to start growing your platform. It's 21 quick, fast ideas, and that comes out in January.
Okay, so I have to ask you this. What do you mean by platform?
Okay, well, you're going to get another one of my analogies. Are you ready?
Okay.
Times Square, New Year's Eve. Picture it. I feel like that woman from Golden Girls. Sicily, 1942. Picture it. But I want you to picture Times Square on New Year's Eve. And we're watching Dick Clark's Rockin' New Year's Eve. And there are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people crammed into Times Square. It's just a mass of bodies. That is all the books that have been published in the last few years. You will never be able to pick out your book. Or even if your sister-in-law is in Times Square, you're never going to be able to find her on the television. But there are people up on a platform. There are people who are sitting up higher, and they're easy to spot. You will find if you try to get an agent or a publisher, the first question they're going to ask you is, well, what kind of platform do you have? How many Twitter followers do you have? How many people are following you online? Do you have a blog? How many people subscribe to that blog? How many other media venues have you been in this year? How many books have you sold? How many articles or magazine articles have you written for? And because a platform isn't just what you've done. A platform is not just your fan base. Here's what a platform is. A platform is the relationship between you and your fans. So all the things that you can do to grow that fan base, and the stronger your relationship, the better your platform. So are you doing a podcast like you are? Absolutely a great, because this is how you build a relationship. I don't care about numbers. I care about the relationship. So do agents, and so do publishers. So this is why we wrote the book, so that we can teach people how to do a podcast. We can explain to them what cast lingo on Alexa is. We can talk to them about market research. They're small little tidbits that anyone can grab onto. And even if they just picked one of these ideas, their platform would get bigger.
Boy, there is just so much stuff that you have to know. It's unbelievable.
I know, but that's how I stay in business. And if you want to know more, I would suggest check out my website, newshelves.com. We've got tons going on there, and you can always reach me if you have questions. Yeah, well,
we're gonna make sure that everybody knows how to find you guys. There's two more questions that I have to ask you, and the first one is, a lot of people now have started, like I've talked to a few people, like a guy, Drew Barton, had written The Buyer's Guide to Websites, and he was a business owner. So, and I talked to him and I asked him, do you think it's a good idea to write a book if you are a business owner? And unequivocally, he said yes. So I am sure you're going to have your fair share of business owners coming to you saying, here's my book, I want to publish it. Have you experienced that yet? And what would you say to them?
Yes, and truthfully, over half of my clients are experts, business owners, consultants in some industry. Right now I'm working with Fred Stuvek, who is a former Navy football. The guy is brilliant, but he's got a book about leadership, but he's running a high-end consultancy. And then there's Bob Lee with Trust Lab. So I work with lots of authors who are entrepreneurs and business people, and their book is actually just one of many ways that they reach out to the world. That's over half of my clientele. Mm-hmm.
Right, and yeah, I had a chance to talk with Fred, and he's amazing, and it really seems that to write a book, it really will, especially if you're successful, it really does highlight your business. So I would just encourage people that if you do have a business and you would like to promote it, that does seem to be the wave of the future. And the New Shelves Book Company is one of the avenues that you can almost assure your success. Now, let's go into this before I let you go, Amy. You've read my book, and you say, Matt, you've got some issues here, and I think you're going to need a cover. And I think you're going to need some editing. And so let's just say and I know my books are, somebody actually referred to my Deceptions book as a tome when it first came out, because I went through one of these publishers and it was 700 pages because they tried to make it as big as they could. I had to look up tome. I didn't even know what it meant. So
it might be a compliment. It sometimes is a compliment and sometimes not. It's a double-edged sword.
It wasn't, because it was from somebody. The title is Mormons, Freemasons, and Extraterrestrials. It's about the connections between the three. And this guy he's working for a newspaper in the town that I was born in Utah. It was no compliment, I assure you, because he thought it was like anti-Mormon. So anyway.
Because they're big fans of aliens, but okay.
Yeah, well, so anyway, I kind of got off the topic there, but so I come to you, and how much is this going to cost me?
Well, we don't do that, but I can tell you how much it's going to cost you. If you go to Pam at Proof to Perfection or Annalisa Parent to get a strong development edit, that could be a couple $1,000s. A good copy edit, you're looking at least $3 a page minimum. A good proofread is $2 a page. Now, I have a couple of cover designers that I adore that charge anywhere from $300 to $1,500, depending on now, Matt, I have seen a number of your books, and if you ever wanted to get your covers redone, I know a great cover designer who would do it for probably $300 a pop.
I've had children tell me to get my covers redone.
Yeah, well, and that's why that guy said they don't do self-published books. He totally does self-published books. He just didn't want that one. Yeah. But out of the mouths of babes.
I'm crying on the inside. Just so you know,
I'm sorry. This is why I don't have more friends.
All that time I spent learning Photoshop. But go ahead, Amy.
But covers aren't designed in Photoshop. Professional covers are designed in InDesign. And we can tell. We can tell immediately. I know when an author is so enamored with a photo on their cover because they don't want to cover it up. If you look at what Simon & Schuster, HarperCollins, and Random House does to their covers, the title is the important thing. But I have so many authors who come to me, and I know that their sister-in-law drew that painting because they refuse to cover it up with the title of the book. It breaks my heart. So anyway, there's also some great templates out there. Joel Friedlander has some great templates. I know I've mentioned him, but also Self Pub Co. has some terrific cover templates, and they're like $50 or $60. And they're better than nothing. They're better than figuring out Photoshop yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was an interesting experience. All right, Amy, I think that we have covered pretty much everything that I wanted to discuss with you. Is there anything else that you would like to say to people that are listening to the podcast now before we go?
Just that, honestly, I have been following you online for the last few weeks since you and Carrie met.
You've been stalking me.
Well, in a very innocent sort of, curious sort of way, because I follow a lot of people in our industry. And Matthew, I am a huge fan of what you're doing and the information that you're sharing out there. And if any of Amy Collins's followers are listening to this, if you're not following Matthew on Twitter, if you're not paying attention to what he's out there, he is uncovering some really great stuff. And so I wanted to thank you for having me on this show. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of people who spend too much of their time promoting themselves. You are truly being of service. And so I wanted to say thanks.
Well, yeah, I appreciate your thanks, and I appreciate you recognizing that, because the one thing that really bothers me, and I'm going to say this before I go, is that the media is so, and I don't want to say fake media, but, let's look at John Grisham. We'll just use him as an example. It was so hard for him to get published. And I think he wrote 2 or 3 books before he came out with the firm, and it's really frustrating. So what I try to do is, I understand that people publish and then they go, no, what now? And I want to give people exposure. That so they can come and be on my podcast and tell people about their books. But I also want people like you on here that will help guys like me and the thousands or millions of others out there that are trying to break into this, to really let us give us your advice. And so that's what I'm really trying to do with this podcast. So I really appreciate that, Amy. And you are a legend. And don't tell me you're not, because you're the keynote speaker in that, I guess it was Vegas. So you're a legend. And I, bow down to you. And I'm not worthy, as they would say on Wayne's World, but I really do appreciate you being on my podcast, Amy.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'm going to send you that publishing checklist that I told you about.
Right.
You can throw it out if you want, or you can post it on your site for anyone to download. If you find it helpful, great. If not, I look forward to seeing you on your next show, because I'm going to see who you're interviewing next.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, and we will talk to you later. So if you are listening or if you're watching on YouTube, please remember you can get this podcast on Spotify now, Stitcher, iTunes, Google Play, we're going to have a video on YouTube. So you can catch it anywhere, and I recommend you got to go to YouTube, because Amy is absolutely stunning, and you got to check her out. So, all right, Amy. Well, it is so nice to talk to you, and you have a super day.
You as well. Bye, guys.
Bye, Amy.
This has been Books in Hindsight with your host, Matthew Hines. Please join us for our next podcast and look for our archives on iTunes and go to thehindsight.com. That's HEINES site.com for great books by Matthew Hines and other great authors.